being afraid of failure is a surefire way to never have massive success. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're talking about failure. I'm so excited. And more specifically, we're going to talk about the art of failing productively, the art of making failure something that gets you closer to success. I think there's a lot of information out there about how to succeed and not a lot of information out there about how to fail. And I think there needs to be more talk about failure and how to do that in a way that serves you to fail properly. I would say that most parents don't achieve their dreams because they don't want to fail. A lot of people say to me, I have a real fear of failure. And I'll say, well, what does that mean? What are you afraid of? How would you define failure? Why are you afraid of failure? And they'll come back to me and say, I'm not really sure. I've never really thought about that. And that's one of the things we do in League. We are always trying to get to the cause of the problems we're having. We don't try to solve the problems. We just try and solve the cause of the problems, the root of the problems. And one of the main causes of a problem is not understanding why we have the problem. So the first thing that I think is important is to understand what failure is. How do you define it? And I'm a big dictionary definition girl. I like the definitions. I looked this one up, of course. And the dictionary definition said the omission of expected or required action. Then I asked ChatGPT, of course. We have to ask ChatGPT everything, which sometimes it doesn't tell me the truth, but this seems pretty spot on. I asked it what failure meant, and it said, failure is the state or condition of not meeting a desired or intended object or outcome. Then I loved that it added this. It said, it is often perceived as a setback or defeat, but it can also be an opportunity for learning, growth, and resilience. I was like, yes, ChatGPT, we are on the same page. We are on the same page. And I was totally surprised by these definitions, pleasantly surprised. I especially loved the definition that said the omission of expected or required action. If failure means we just don't do our own expected action or something else didn't do our expected action, it seems so neutral, so benign. It seems, okay, that's what happened. Moving on. There was an omission of action on either my part or your part, and that's what we're calling failure. It's no big deal. That's how that definition occurs to me. It's just something that didn't turn out the way I expected. So what most people do is they just stop expecting and then they never fail. So they think. I call this failing ahead of time when we don't actually do anything. So we don't make any progress. We don't fail, so to speak, but we do fail because we don't actually accomplish anything. This leads to low expectations, and we just keep recycling the same life. They never go outside their parenting comfort zone. They stay in the same cycle where I'm battling out with my kids. Bedtime's never getting better. We continue to argue around homework, and it's just over and over again. And they never really have to deal with trying to miss their own expectation or not meet their own expectation because they're not trying something new. And I've done this. I've been stuck in this cycle where it's just, it feels as though it's hopeless. So therefore, I'm not even going to try to problem solve this anymore because I've tried having a conversation. I've tried setting some limits and it's just not working. My kids are still pushing back. Bedtime's still a disaster. And so therefore, I'm just going to stop and then recycle. So frustrating. What I want to say is this is failing ahead of time. Instead, we need to keep iterating. And yeah, we might fail 1,000 more times until we are able to figure out the right bedtime routine or the right way to navigate homework. But the learning and the growth that comes from it, when we are able to take something that's not working and try and fail and learn. So many of the parents that I talk to, this is their main issue. They're unsure of themselves. They don't want to mess up their parenting. I get this. They don't want to get the feedback from their kids that they're messing up. Their kids are saying stuff. Their kids are misbehaving. They don't want them to mess up. They don't want their kids to mess up. They don't want to fail at parenting because let's face it, parenting is one of the most important things we're going to do in this life. And so we want to do it well, And we misinterpret the failures as evidence that we're not doing a good job. And that's not true. When I ask my parents that I work with, why are you avoiding doing the homework assignment or listening to the lessons or doing daily peace? If you guys are in there, you know what I'm talking about. If you're one of my league members, daily peace is this awareness tool that we use in all of my programs in league. And it helps your brain start to see things clearer. It's one of the most powerful tools to get ourselves in a state of regulation and calmness. But if we're not doing it, if we're avoiding it, it's something that we don't need our kids to do. It takes 10 to 15 minutes a day. And if we're not doing it, I'll ask them, like, why are you avoiding doing your daily peace? Why haven't you done it lately? Or they're struggling to believe that connection, not correction, is the answer. Whatever it is that they're not experimenting with that has been proven will help them in their parenting, it's always because they don't want to feel something. They don't want to feel like a failure because it doesn't work. They don't want to feel their kids push back in that resistance. So if failure is really just not meeting your own expectations or not taking the required action to meet your own expectations, then what's really going to happen when that happens is you're going to think some thoughts. Does that make sense? It's going to create some negative emotion if we fail, or if we fail ahead of time. Either way, let's be honest, either way, it's uncomfortable. Would you rather have it be uncomfortable because you're still battling out with the kids and there's no progress? Or would you rather have it be uncomfortable because you're not quite sure if this will work, but you're going to try to do some awareness activities every day for yourself to get yourself regulated? You're going to try a different way of interacting and asking your kids. And yeah, it might not work, but at least that fail will help you iterate and move forward and progress and learn so that you can have progress and it can feel productive. So the real reason we're avoiding any kind of missing the mark, any kind of not meeting our expectations, is because we don't want to feel what we're going to feel when that happens. And here's what's really interesting about that. When you don't meet your own expectations, the only feeling that you're going to end up having is based on what you decide to think. Stay with me here. Stay with me. So you set out to do something, you have an expectation of the result, and you miss that expectation. You want to have this beautiful interaction when the kids come home from school, you've made their favorite snack, you've gotten yourself in a really good place, and you feel like you're going to be able to ask them to do their homework in a really respectful, kind, compassionate, firm way, and it doesn't work. The kids don't want your treat, they come home agitated, they don't want to do their homework, they're pushing back, and you're like, oh my gosh. Now at this point, you get to decide what you're going to make that mean. You get to decide what you're going to think about that. You get to interpret the situation in a way that hurts your feelings or doesn't hurt your feelings. And if you think about it in a way that's dejecting and disappointing, then you're going to experience a negative emotion. And so ironically, the whole reason you're avoiding failing is because you're avoiding something that you have control over, which is your reaction to the fail. So are you guys following this? You getting it? Because it's so important that we understand this. When we are avoiding something, what we're really avoiding is something that we are in charge of. And we act like it's happening to us, but it's not. So most people, when I talk to them about failure, will say that failure happens to me and then I experience it. But what if that's not true? What really happens is we miss our expectations and then we decide to make it mean something that hurts us, that feels negative, that feels bad. And we decide to make it mean something that causes us this negative emotion. So first of all, there can be work on that end of it, right? So when we don't meet our expectation, when the kids come home from school and we have this beautiful snack out and we have our brains in such a good place that we're ready to connect with them and we want to have this conversation, and then we visualize them doing their homework, and none of that works out today. Let's say none of that works out. So we definitely haven't met this expectation we have in our mind. We can decide to make that mean the end of the world. We totally can. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with my kids. They're rude. They're entitled. I'm, must not be a good parent, whichever way your brain spins. Sometimes we beat ourselves up. Sometimes we, want to make it about the kids, something negative about the kids. Sometimes we do both. So that could be the way we spin it. Or we can decide to make the same situation that I just described, where even though we had well thought out, beautiful plans to connect with our kids and help them get their homework done after school, none of that worked out. Same situation. So we can make it mean it's the end of the world, or we can make it mean something positive. And if we make it mean something positive, if we decide ahead of time, no matter what happens, I'm going to learn and grow from this, and I'm not going to make it mean something bad about me. I'm not going to make it mean something negative about my kids. Then we won't be dreading the experience. We'll be able to create something that we want to create out of it, regardless of what actually happens. So let me give you an example, because I know that sounds interesting in theory, but you might not quite be understanding what I'm saying, especially if you're not in league with me, or maybe you haven't listened to very many of the podcasts or haven't read my book. So let's say I try to stay calm when my 5-year-old is having a meltdown, or my teenager has gotten so frustrated because I won't buy her Chick-fil-A for the 3rd time this week. And I'm staying really calm and I'm feeling really good about myself. But after the 5-year-old's been melting down for 15 minutes, or my teenagers start saying that I'm mean and selfish, I get triggered. I lose my cool. I was feeling really good about everything and how I was handling the situation. But then as soon as I lose my cool, my brain flips to, you're such a failure. You're never going to get this. This is hopeless. Something's wrong with you. And I start feeling terrible. Well, the reason I feel terrible is because I'm making it mean that there's something wrong with me, that I'm not any good at this. That's why that quote unquote fail that I'm dwelling on is so awful. It's because I'm thinking a thought that is making me feel awful. Now, alternatively, I could get ready for the day. I could try to stay calm no matter what my kids do. And when my 5-year-old has this epic meltdown, or my teenager gets frustrated because I won't buy her Chick-fil-A for the 3rd time this week, and I lose my cool, I could think something different. I could think, oh, wow, that's the best you could do right now. Let's iterate on this. This must be a really big trigger. And then I get to learn why I lost my cool when my child acts that way. I definitely still, in either scenario, didn't meet my expectation. I want to be better. I want to be calmer. I want to stay connected. I don't want to lose my mind when my kids push back. So the situation, it's the same, but the way I'm viewing it is different. And one leads to more negativity, more judgment, more resistance. And one leads to learning, more capacity, and a potential new interaction in the future. I'm learning what happened that caused me to get triggered when my child acted this way. And I keep moving forward from here. And next time I hope to do better. I wonder why I didn't have the ability to tap into my capacity to stay connected. That's what I'm looking at. I'm so interested in understanding that. I'm wanting to figure that out, but not because something's wrong with me. I just have a lack of ability to tap into my capacity to stay connected. I know my capacity is there. I'm just not able to tap fully into it. And if you go back to the definition, it's the omission of expected or required action. So I love thinking about it that way. It's just that something didn't go right. I didn't quite get it. I had a goal to stay connected and calm. It didn't happen. So what can I learn or do to help me do better next time? When I think about it that way, it actually doesn't make me want to avoid the failure. It makes me want to learn. It makes me want to grow and try. So you can see that I'm the one that's determining what failure will be like for me and how I will decide to think about it when I don't meet my own expectations, which is going to happen. Every day, there's going to be something where I don't meet my expectations, especially when you're first learning Connect Method parenting. The gap between the way society has taught us to parent with consequences and punishments and timeouts and ultimatums and lectures and all the things, and the place that you're going towards where your kids actually want to listen to you. You have this beautiful relationship. You're able to stay calm no matter what's happening externally. You got to bridge the divide, and it takes a while. So failure is inevitable. Failure is necessary to learn the skill set needed to get to the other side. If you already could do it, you'd already be there. So failure isn't something to avoid. It's actually something to invite. It's something that will allow you to get to the other place, to become a new person. So you can see that I'm the one that's determining what failure will be like for me and deciding how I want to think about it when I don't meet my own expectations, which is going to happen. I believe that success is one of those things that is acquired by failure and by being willing to fail. I believe that if you want success, you need to double your rate of failure. The better you get at failing, the more you're going to be willing to do it. The more you're going to learn, the better you're going to get at meeting your expectations and handling it when you don't meet your expectations. So if failure is not meeting your own expectations, then I would define success as meeting your expectations. And the best way to meet them is to practice meeting them and to make lots of mistakes and learn from the times where you don't meet them. And that is something that when you think about failure, when you think about taking action in a way that you're not afraid of failure, then we become less wrapped up in what failure means, and we don't have to get it perfectly. A lot of people will say to me that they're perfectionists. I get it. I'm a recovering perfectionist, so I understand this. And they'll say to me that, I don't understand it. I want to get it right. I can't try this. And they won't try connect method parenting or won't go fully in on it because they're afraid they won't get it right. Totally get it. Been there, done that. And it's the best way to never succeed. Being afraid of failure is a surefire way to never have massive success. As a recovering perfectionist, I say this with so much love in my heart because this is for me to hear as well. I have to constantly remind myself that being tied to perfection is not getting me anywhere. And when I'm stuck in a perfectionistic mode, I can see that I'm scared, very scared of rejection, scared of what people will think. And realizing that helps me, see clearly what the problem is and decide, am I willing to let go of being perfect because it's going to create the growth and the results I want in my life? What I've realized over the years is that perfectionism gives me, and if you suffer with this too, it'll give you an excuse to not take the actions, to not put yourself out there to fail, to not meet your own expectations. And the reason why we don't want to meet our own expectations is because we know that if we don't meet them, we're going to beat ourselves up badly. We're going to beat ourselves up really badly. My brain really likes to be critical. I have a very mean part of my brain. And if I don't meet my expectations, it wants to go right in, my inner critic, go in and just beat the crap out of me. So if you were to make a deal with yourself today and say, hey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to try to do this. And there's for sure a huge chance that I'm not going to meet my expectations. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail many, many, many times. And here's the thing, when I fail, I'm going to have my own back. I'm going to allow the inner critic to be heard, him aside or her aside. I'm going to treat myself with respect. I'm going to honor myself. I'm going to use my failing opportunities to take care of myself, to practice taking better care of myself. Every time I fail, I'm going to see it as an opportunity to increase my ability to love and be kind to myself. I'm going to continually try to refuse to beat myself up when I don't meet my own expectations. I'm not going to allow myself to keep saying mean things to myself or to quit. Parenting is way too important for me to quit. I had to get over this perfectionistic part of me and be okay failing, have safety in failing. Now, if you set yourself up for that ahead of time, before you start any kind of action, you're going to be so much more willing to take action. And second of all, to take the risk that most changes require. To be successful, to make changes, to become the calm, connected parent you want to be, it's risky. It feels vulnerable. There's going to be confusion and uncertainty. You're going to mess up. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're not going to know what to say. You're putting yourself outside of your comfort zone to try something you haven't done, and it feels risky. But what are you risking? Failure. You could fail. But if you know that if you fail, you're going to take care of yourself, you're going to be much more willing to fail. And if you're much more willing to fail, you're going to double, triple, quadruple your rate of failure. And every increment of failure we increase, we have a much higher chance of ultimately getting success, of learning that strategic byproduct from that failure so that we can take that learning, that growth into the next situation and do better. Now, let's talk about the benefits of failing. I love the example of the little baby learning to walk. It's full of epic fails. You see them walk. It's not pretty. They're tripping over themselves. They're crashing into things. And what's fascinating is all the adults around them are just cheering them on. They're not seeing any of those big old falls, big old biffs, failures to get more than one step in as anything but positive. And the child doesn't see it as a problem either. They just keep getting back up, falling, getting back up, failing over and over again until they learn to walk. And what I've read is that the muscles that they develop that can only be developed when they fail and have to learn how to push themselves up are the very muscles they have to develop. They have to grow and strengthen those muscles so that they can walk. So when they first start to walk, most babies don't have those muscles developed, so they really can't walk, but they have to try to walk, to fall, to push themselves up, to develop the muscles that eventually will allow them to walk. So it's the failing that allows them to get strong enough to actually do the walking. And I think that's just brilliant. In office hours inside League, we were recently talking about this idea of confidence that I think goes hand in hand with failure. And how do we define confidence? And where does confidence come from? And one of the things that I said is that I think confidence is our willingness to fail in front of people. And I would distill this down in front of ourselves, in front of our partner, in front of our kids, in front of our in-laws, in front of the person at the grocery store. I just had an experience not too long ago where I was in a meeting locally and some things were said that were very different from my experience of what they were sharing. And I leaned over to my husband and I said, how interesting. This is really interesting, that point of view that was just shared. Then someone else got up and reiterated the same, what I viewed as a very non-helpful idea. Then a third person got up and basically said the same thing. And now this was a meeting where the structure was open. People were invited to come up and share their thoughts. There was no agenda or speaker. It was just a sharing meeting. So even though I wasn't planning on getting up, I ended up getting up and I shared what I felt was an honest but contrarian opinion to the rest of the people who had shared their point of view that night. And I was so nervous, but I felt like I needed to say this thing. And I had no idea what I was going to say. And this community is very important to me. It means a lot to me. So I was afraid of saying the wrong thing or offending people or failing or looking like a fool or not having any words come to me because I had nothing prepared. Just went up willy-nilly and just shared off the cuff. And I didn't want people to judge me or misunderstand me. I reminded myself of my intention to be honest, to not make anyone wrong, to show up kind and loving towards everyone, believing that everyone had good intentions, that they were doing their best. And I shared my point of view in front of all of these people. And so many people came up to me after and said, wow, that was exactly what I was thinking, but I was too afraid to say something. Thank you for saying something. Now, I have not always been willing to do this, but I've been working so hard on this for years. And I felt safe enough to take the risk to possibly fail publicly in front of everybody. And I was so proud of myself that I got up and said my truth, not because I needed to prove anything, not because the world was better because I said it, but because I felt that it was important. And even though it was scary and rejection felt imminent and failure was a great possibility, I did it anyway. And I share this because there comes this point when you worked on this where your tolerance for failure and your ability to, even if I had failed, my ability to learn from it has finally gotten to the point where that would have been okay. And that was a huge step for me. Speaking in public, scary. Sharing a contrarian view, scary. Increasing my risk for rejection and failure, very scary. But when we decide to do it and we realize it's safe to fail, life changes. Most people get their confidence from their past. They want to say, I'll be confident after I do XYZ, then I'll be competent at it. But that's not how it works. So, for example, let's use the pouring a glass of water scenario here. We feel very confident when we're pouring a glass of water because we've done it so many times, we know we're capable of doing it. So if we accidentally spill or we knock it over, we don't turn that into a reason to quit. We don't make ourselves a failure. We don't beat ourselves up. We're just like, oh, that's weird. How come I failed at pouring a glass of water today? We don't make it mean anything negative. If we fail, we know that we're not going to quit and never do it again. And we don't make it mean that we're not competent. So how do you feel that same sense of confidence as you do when you're pouring a glass of water, when you're doing something you've never done before? We have to find confidence in our future. And then how do you find confidence in your future when you're doing something you've never done before? You're doing something that because you've never done it before, you're probably going to fail at it over and over and over again. So your confidence has to come from your ability to fail productively, knowing that you're not going to give up and you're not going to let some failure get in the way of you doing it again and getting better and better and better. So confidence comes from being willing to fail again, and learn how to fail better. And that's why failure isn't just one of these concepts that you talk about, after you don't do well on a math test or after you don't do well at bedtime routine tonight. Failure is something you have to consider as something you want to include in your life. Yep, you heard me. Include failure in your life. It's not something to avoid. It's actually something to pursue. I often say, welcome it in. Like, your child's going to have a tantrum today. Instead of saying, oh, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen. Welcome in the tantrum and see how you show up. And even if it's a quote unquote fail and it doesn't go well, that's okay. Welcome it in. Then you get to learn from it. You get to grow from it. It doesn't feel scary. It doesn't feel like something you have to protect yourself from. It doesn't feel like something you have to make mean anything about yourself or your child. It's just life. So if I feel confident about my ability to fail, you can see how I'm probably going to try new things. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to be successful. And as a parent, if you're confident in your ability to fail, you can see how you're going to keep trying. You're going to keep attempting to do the things that are going to bring you closer to your goal, even if it doesn't work the first, second, third, fourth, 20th time. Even if it was working great last week, but this week it's not working so well, you'll be able to notice the quote unquote failure. I don't love using that word, but just that's what we're using on this podcast, this failure, which is an opportunity for learning and growing, and use it to do better. Does that make sense? So instead of using the word failure, maybe we could use the word learning or growth. There's that quote by Edison where he said something like, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned 1,000 ways it didn't work. And I love that quote because it's reframing failure as learning, as growth opportunities. I think Nelson Mandela said something like, I never fail, I only learn or grow. And it's on the same vein here where it's, okay, we didn't meet our expectations. We didn't take correct actions. So we just need to adjust and keep moving forward and keep changing until we do meet our expectations. No big deal. And when we think about failure like that, we think about it in a way that is positive. Think about it in a way as something that we want to move towards instead of something that we want to move away from. I actually like the idea of practicing failure. I like the idea of failure being a skill that I get better at, that I develop. So if we're good at failing, we actually learn how to fail. So like the baby who gets really good at falling down and then getting back up, falling down and getting back up, the confidence that they gain is from the failure. And we're going to have that confidence moving into the future. If we get comfortable falling down or failing and getting back up, and we realize it's the falling and the getting back up that creates the capacity to do better next time, we won't worry about falling down. We won't worry about failing. So I hope that resonated for you, that something in your mind, it clicked. I like this idea that failure could be something we embrace and we get excited about. What if it got us thinking about our future instead of avoiding it? Wouldn't that be amazing? What if I had a goal to have so many epic fails every month? Wouldn't that be incredible? I've started doing that. Like, I want to live such a big life that of course I'm not going to know how to do everything I want to do. So I see my failures as fantastic. Got a failure. Moving forward with my parenting, with my life, with the way I'm teaching Connect Method Parenting. And since adopting that, I'm trying to accumulate a certain number of failures every month as a positive, like a workout. It's making me stronger. And it really is working. It's something that I'm getting so much better at. And I have so much more confidence when I'm trying new things, because the worst thing that can happen ultimately is that I fail. And the worst thing beyond that is how I feel about my failure, which I'm learning how to decide what I want to make that mean. I'm getting better and better at that as the years go by. And if I know that I'm not going to make those failures mean anything negative, I'm going to make them mean something positive. I'm going to tell myself, good job. You tried something really big and it failed. Bravo. Or good job. You tried something that was really important to you. You missed your expectation, but you learned so much. Then I can get really excited. I can anticipate my momentum towards the future because I'm willing to fail constantly. I'm willing to feel that. And I want to be really clear about one thing when it comes to failure. And I think it's important that we separate failure outside of your comfort zone by taking risks, by putting yourself out there, versus failing by not doing the things, not showing up. And here's what I mean by that. If you create a brand new chore system and your kids say, no, not into that, not interested in doing chores or helping around the house, you've put yourself out there. You're trying something new. You're the toddler learning how to walk. You're learning how to iterate on the chore system that your kids, hopefully, you were hoping, but didn't happen this time, will someday, though, get excited about. You're learning how to handle your mind. You're learning how to make your relationships with your kids better so they'll want to listen to you. So if you create this great chore system and your kids are not interested, sure, you could count it as a failure, but really it's just an opportunity to learn about yourself, about your kids. Why didn't it work? What didn't resonate about it? It doesn't mean anything about you or your kids. This is the kind of failure I want you to do more of. Go out, try something. Hey guys, here's the plan for our chores. Here's the plan for our electronics. Here's the plan for how we're going to do our homework, and see what happens. Go all in. Do your personal work to make sure your mind's in the right place. Do your connection work so you have good relationships so that you can present these plans, or you can try to show up better in the moment if there's off-track behavior in a different way, and then learn when it doesn't work out the way you want to. Now, there's another kind of failure that comes up from just not showing up, from settling or sabotaging yourself. And it's something I don't want to encourage you to do more of. Here's what I mean by that. Let's say we'll go back to the 5-year-old teenager tantrum scenario I gave you. When you see the tantrum, you just give up. You're like, it's the kids. Or you beat yourself up. It's me. And you don't have the engagement. You're not present with it. You don't see it as an opportunity to try something different. You're just settling. And this kind of failure, when we give up before we even try something, instead of saying, I'm going to see if I can hold space for this toddler, this 5-year-old, to go through their emotional mad to sad trip, or I'm going to come alongside the teenager who's mad about Chick-fil-A, not getting Chick-fil-A for the 5th time or 3rd time, whatever this week I said, and allow them to be upset at me and not make them wrong and not get into an argument. I'm going to try this other way of interacting with them and see how it goes. It might not work. It might feel bad. They might flip out. I might lose my cool, but I'm going to try. That's productive. That's moving me into, it still might be a failure, but I'm going to learn and grow from it. But when I just disengage, when I'm not showing up, I'm not doing the prep work, I'm not creating the pre-response plan to prepare for these temper tantrums, I'm not doing the work to get my mind clean so I don't make it mean something negative about them or me, then I'm sabotaging myself. This is the kind of failure that is definitely not something you want to do, because it's still failure. You're still not getting the result you want, but you're not getting the result because you've omitted the required action it would take to create an environment where your kids and you have the potential to be successful, to be in a better relationship, to have more listening. So when we don't do the prep work to create an environment where our children can thrive, when we aren't ready to handle our nervous system when things get crazy, when we haven't done the work to invest in the relationships, when you haven't done the work to choose closeness when the kids are having off-track behavior, when we don't do that work ahead of time, we're failing ahead of time. And by the way, that comes from the way that you are thinking about whatever it is you're attempting to do. So if you think it's not possible to show up more calm and connected, if you think you've messed up so many times with your kids that you think damage done, I can't turn this around, it's never going to work, then you may not be willing to go all in on connect method parenting because you don't believe it's possible. So you're sabotaging yourself ahead of time. And this is not something I want to encourage you to do over and over again, because what that is it's just spinning within your perceived own discomfort / comfort zone without moving forward. And typically the thoughts that drive this kind of action are, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the kids. I'm not worth it. This isn't worth it. Nobody's going to like me. I shouldn't even show up. It's never worked. I'm not going to be able to be patient. So when you find yourself in that kind of failure, call it failing ahead of time, what needs to happen is you need to take a look at your mind and find out what's going on for you. If you're in league, go do a daily piece. Going to expose the root cause of your thinking. Think of it as another invitation to tap in to the preparatory work to prepare you to do this new thing. Whether you fail or succeed doesn't matter if you're going all in and you're okay that whatever outcome happens. But what you don't want to do is not do the prep work, not be prepared, give up hope, and just repeat in the same tug of war with your kids. And you'll probably hear people say a lot, the first time you make a mistake, it's no big deal. You learn from it, but you don't want to make that exact mistake again. So hopefully we learn just something from it. And when I say you don't want to make the exact mistake again, you might say the same words at bedtime. You might get similarly frustrated when the kids don't do their chores. But the idea is that every time we're learning something, we're growing, we're becoming more capable, and those will have a compound effect. The little 1% shifts, the 1% awarenesses, those have a shift so that we create something different in the future. If you do something and you don't meet your own expectation and then you try it again the exact same way and get the same result, I would consider that staying within your comfort zone. I would say that's self-sabotage, and we don't want to repeat it. What we want to do is we don't meet our expectation. We learn, we grow, we iterate a little bit, we have more awareness, we try again, and maybe we still don't meet our expectation, but we've attempted to do it in a slightly different way. We've had a little bit more awareness. We learn and we grow. That's productive. Failure is putting yourself out there into the unknown, doing something that you don't know. Now, a couple of things I want to share with you that you may not be able to discover in yourself. Okay, there are a few things that I find in my parenting group. They say, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was doing this. And one of the things that helps us avoid failure, this failure ahead of time, is by being stuck in confusion in an unproductive way. We say we're confused. We don't know how this happened. I don't know what's going on. So we avoid putting ourselves out there in a new way in our parenting, or we avoid looking at what didn't go right, why we didn't meet our expectation, and learning and growing from our failure. We're afraid of how we'll treat ourselves on the other side. So please be careful. If you notice yourself not taking action, not putting yourself out there, not learning from your failures, and you're staying confused, then just know that this is one of the ways we avoid failure. You need to be on to yourself. Pay attention. You need to look at yourself, because when you avoid failure, you're also at the very same time avoiding success. You're spinning yourself away from what you want. You're telling yourself the reason why is because you're confused. Being confused, saying, I don't know, being unable to decide what to do next time to do better is a way of hiding. I've done this. I get it. That's why I can speak to it. So tell yourself the truth about it. I never say to myself, I don't know how to do something. I don't say that. If I say that, I try not to stay there. I try to catch it because it doesn't serve me. Instead, I'll say, I'm figuring out how to do something, or it's possible that I could figure out how to solve this problem, or I'm going to figure out how to do this thing, or I'm learning these steps. I'm learning how to understand something that allows me to move forward. Saying it in that way doesn't prevent me from moving forward. It keeps me going. I don't say I don't know. I say I'm figuring it out. I don't say I'm decided. I say I'm going to decide. I know there's no one perfect right decision. And when I make a decision, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to try it. I'm going to be willing to have it be the quote unquote wrong decision. I'm going to be willing to quote unquote fail. And I'm just going to notice that if my nervous system is trying to keep me from taking action, to save me from the pain of failing by staying in confusion, I'm going to remind myself that I know that staying in confusion prevents me from taking actions that will ultimately lead to my success. Because the reason you don't want to fail is because you don't want to feel the feelings that you would feel, that you think you will feel when you fail. I hope this has helped you see that failure is a necessary part of success. So I hope that makes sense. I hope this has helped you change the way you think about failure, seeing it as a thing that can be for you and not against you. That failure is the currency to our success. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad that you're here with me. Wishing you all the best with your kids. And enjoy yourself as you make more failures, because you're going all in on your parenting and you're remembering that every failure that I can use for me is one step closer to my success. We'll talk to you later, guys. Bye. Thanks so much for listening, you all. If you are ready to learn more about Connect Method Parenting, if you've been listening to the podcast and you think, ooh, I'd love to be able to implement this in my life and with my parenting more, then check out Pivot. It's my 8-week program where we deep dive into learning and implementing Connect Method Parenting so that you can take this information and transform your parenting journey. Head over to connectmethodparenting.com to find out when the next group starts.